Good evening, Madam Deputy Speaker. I have the honour that in 107 years of the Royal Air Force Police, I am the first of its veterans elected to this House. Our armed forces are revered worldwide because they train and execute one thing to a higher standard than anybody else: the moral component, discipline and the will to fight. Without these two principles, an effective fighting force descends into what we see from the Russian military in Ukraine: the extrajudicial killing of civilians, soldiers motivated not by an objective but by fear of their own colleagues and commanders, and the routine humiliation, torture and murder of their own colleagues. We must hold our armed forces to a higher standard than our adversaries because they are better than those adversaries. They must be expected to act within the law. Where they act outside the law, but in good faith, they must be defended, recognising the unique pressures under which they operate. Because if there are no consequences for breaking the law whilst in uniform, then no longer would we pledge to protect our own troops from the retribution of their own commanders, from illegal orders or poor leadership, whether in Northern Ireland or Afghanistan. No longer would we stand by our statement before the world in Nuremberg 80 years ago that just following orders does not excuse war crimes. Private Brian Soden from Tewkesbury was only 20 years old when he lost his life on his third deployment to Northern Ireland. Like so many others, he was murdered in an ambush by cowardly paramilitaries, and those who bravely served in Northern Ireland did so under the constant threat of an enemy, often disguised as a civilian, lurking and awaiting an opportunity to kill them. Our Northern Ireland veterans should be in no doubt that this country will continue to distinguish their noble service from the deceitful and inhumane paramilitary terrorism they stood and fought against. To do that, the IRA cannot be the barometer. We cannot resolve to hold our troops to the same standard that they hold their terrorists. To do so would not only legitimise terrorism, it would sell out those who conducted themselves with honour. Those Conservative members who last week hijacked a debate around remembrance to score political points around this bill neglected to recognise that we are only here because their Northern Ireland Troubles Bill was a hash and satisfied none of the parties to whom it applied. Some of those who spoke in that debate referenced a letter printed in the Times the day before Armistice Day, written by 8 retired generals and 1 retired Air Chief Marshal, under whom I taught the law of armed conflict to RAF recruits. The signatories asserted that the Northern Ireland Bill tears up our contract with our personnel, that today every member of the British Armed Forces must consider not only the enemy in front, but the lawyer behind. It paints an emotive image, but it's misleading. I served for 23 years, and from the very beginning and every year thereafter, I was reminded that I had to act within the law, and that if I acted outside the law, but in good faith, I would be protected by the law. I'd be delighted to.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Gentleman for giving way. For the past few months, when I was the Northern Ireland spokesperson for my party, I engaged with lots of different veterans groups who tell me that they are very keen in this legislation to see or to recognise that as service personnel they went to Northern Ireland to restore the rule of law. They recognise they should be subject to the possibility of prosecution, but that prosecution should never turn into persecution. Given the argument the gentleman is making, how does he see those 2 points reconciling with his own issues that he recognises?
I thank him for raising that point, and he's absolutely right. We went there to secure peace against terrorists, and the law should always recognise the difference between the actions of our soldiers and those of the terrorists they stood against. So I always knew that I had to act within the law, but that if I broke the law in good faith, I would be protected by that law. Now, if, to the minds of those who signed that letter, this bill undermines that contract, then not only have they declined to clearly identify where, but I cannot find it myself. If this wider debate is about supporting our veterans and our armed forces, then members will find an ally in me. But if what they really seek is to absolve personnel of responsibility for alleged war crimes, including those against United Kingdom citizens, then let them say it aloud. The worst I can say about this bill is that while I recognise the shortcomings of its preceding legislation, the government does not have the support of the Veterans Commissioners. Can the Minister clarify which, if any, veterans groups have approved the bill in its current format? Furthermore, by opting with convention rather than bringing this bill to a full public bill committee, the government has declined the opportunity for a full line-by-line parliamentary oversight and cross-party collaboration. Fiat Justitia.